to the cloud. Okay. So welcome everybody to the webinar, our first webinar of the autumn about setting up a consultancy business. Really looking forward to welcoming Adam Katz and hopefully Simon Rickman to the webinar. Thank you, Adam, for your time. I think in this day and age, especially where people might have been furloughed, where people are thinking of maybe making different approaches in their work career and having to pivot a business, setting up a consultancy is a really important topic that we wanted to cover, because if you've been an expert in a business and you've got a lot of experience from the corporate world, then translating that into becoming freelance or running your own consultancy business is a good transition to be able to make if you can do it. It's not always that easy, but as we'll talk about, and I'm sure you've all got your own experiences of it. Just so you know, Work Avenue are open for business. We have been open all the way through lockdown, and even if we go into more lockdown, we're still open. We're doing one-to-one business advice. Hannah Mindell, who's my colleague, waving now, and I are delighted to be able to talk to any of you about your business, and we all of our business advice meetings are free of charge. And you'll also see that we've got a lot of activity happening, from September. This is our first session. We've got a sales workshop, which I'm going to be running next week, and Hannah's going to be running a workshop called Don't Be Scared of the Numbers on the week of the 23rd of September. And then we've got loads of activity happening again through October, November and December. So lots and lots of support available for any of you who need business advice. So yeah, looking forward to starting this webinar. Adam, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to start with you to start the webinar on setting up a consultancy. I'll leave you to make your own introduction and your consultancy experience and how it can help for today's webinar.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been had involvement with Work Avenue for a number of years, both using their services, and then now I've kind of at a position where I've been able to kind of give back a little bit more recently. And you do amazing work, so please keep going. You're giving a lot of great support. So in terms of sort of who I am and kind of why I'm talking to you today. So my background is as a management consultant in PwC, so that's PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Ernst & Young. And my specialism was sort of human resources in terms of my functional expertise. And so that's kind of what I'm bringing to the table. So there's lots of great lessons to be learned from sort of your top tier management consultants, and there's absolutely no reason that you can't start to apply those lessons and some of those key lessons in your business as you're starting up for yourself. So there's obviously a lot of information that I could share, but let me share my screen now. Let me just get that up. So give me a quick thumbs up if you can all see my screen. Great, thank you. So there's obviously a lot of things that I could share, but in terms of really focusing in for the next sort of 10-15 minutes, what I think would be really useful is to give you an overview of the consulting market. So what that means is, what type of consultancy are you, and what sort of service and value are you bringing to your clients? And then I will bring in a couple of practical lessons in terms of from the management consulting toolkit. So sort of as Joe mentioned, it's one thing to really know your stuff technically, and you'll all be really really strong technically, all have something valuable to bring to clients. And it's another thing to kind of be able to transition that into a consulting setting and working with clients. So as an example, I remember especially my early consulting career, I really struggled to kind of get to grips. I kind of knew everything. I understood all the technical, I knew exactly what was going on, but there was something holding me back. There was something which I was really struggling with. And I had a colleague called Jin, and I was working on a project with BT. And this one sentence literally changed my consulting career. He said, "Adam, consulting is all about telling a story. It's all about telling a story." So that's kind of what these parts are going to be about, a little bit how you can start to take your deep technical knowledge and how you can use that in a couple of consulting tools to start to tell a story from that. So management consulting market overview. Essentially, there are 3 types of consultancy that you can be. You've kind of got strategy consulting, business advisory, and implementation. And again, I'll talk about each of these and sort of different organizations that play in these areas from a top tier consulting point of view, just so you can get an idea of, where do you think you are in that space, and which of these skills do you think you have that you bring to the table. And again, it's worth noting that this is kind of like in terms of your skill set, so or the type of advice that you're giving. So strategy is a particular type of advice, business advisory is a particular type of advice, and implementation support is a particular type of service that you're providing. And you can do that within a technical specialism. So for me, it was human resources. So I kind of would do some different parts of these within the human resource function. Or you might be that you've got a particular sector that you're knowledgeable at. So it might be fintech as an example, the sports industry, whatever it is. You might have a particular specialism as well. But in terms of kind of what each of these things are, so what is a strategy consultant? So in terms of organizations, so if you're doing your own research, you look at companies like McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, Bain. And so what sort of problems do they solve? They help their client with, what's the direction of travel that you're going in? What's the long-term vision? So that might be, do you need to bring a new product to the market? Do you need to bring a new service to the market? Do you need to take existing products and take them to a new market? If you are going to do that, what are your options for doing that? So it's quite sort of blue sky, not quite blank sheet of paper, but kind of that longer term positioning. So as a business, this is the direction that you need to be going in. And as an example of that, it might be one of my favorite consulting stories of it actually going wrong was, I think it was McKinsey did a piece of work with an HR function, which was, where should you have your manufacturing base? And they did all this great research for their first client. And they said, you should base yourself in this region because it's got good infrastructure, it's got a good network for procurement and supply chain, and labor is quite cheap. And so that company moved there. And then on the back of that, they then gave exactly the same advice to all their other clients going forward. And then suddenly the price of labor kind of shot right up, and they kind of undercut their own advice. But that would be an example. So the sort of skills that you need in that, sort of really deep analytical skills, you need to be really strong and disciplined problem solving. I talked about storytelling, and I'm not going to go into some of those other points, but option analysis and presentation, being really clear in how you present that back to your clients and what their options are. So the next area is business advisory, and this is mainly where my experience comes in. And again, that was both PwC and Ernst & Young. And that's, so again, if you think about the journey, so let's say you've got a new strategy, and there's lots of different reasons you might sort of be using a business advisory service. It might be change of strategy. It might be you've had two companies have merged together. It might be you've got a particular challenge to deal with. But again, in the spectrum of this, it might be there might be a new strategy. So it might be we're going into a new market, or we want to merge with another company. Right, so if you're going to merge companies, how do you then start to operate that in practice? So, are you going to have, are you going to keep the company separate, so separate brands, but maybe you'll have separate, front-facing brands, but operate them from one base, so one HR function, one finance function, or maybe it makes sense, you'll have two HR functions, because there might be, various terms and conditions and, various things which it makes sense to keep it separate. So it's really thinking about, if this is the direction you're going in, how do you start to design your function or this part of the business to operate and deliver that? And again, a lot of the skill sets that you need are quite similar. So deep analytical skills. Where it starts to change is, some design. So, what are your options for delivering this? And that's kind of high level options, detailed options, really strong discipline, problem solving, and again, that storytelling piece coming in. And then at the quote unquote bottom end, and that's not to belittle it, but that's just in terms of strategy at the top. Advisory, what are your options for implementing, and then actually implementation. You've got organizations like Accenture and IBM. So again, research all these organizations to give you a flavor, and then you can think for yourself, what sort of service am I offering? And that's Accenture, IBM, that's all about implementation of recommendations. They tend to be system implementers. So it could be, we need a new finance system, we need a new procurement system, we need a new CRM system. So it might be helping your client select the right system, and then project managing the implementation and doing the change management. So helping people adopt to the new ways of working. And again, so that's much more about program and project management to go live. It's really detailed design, process design. You might think about TUPE. So again, if you've got organizations who are transitioning from one to another, so you've kind of got all these deep technical things. And again, even as a freelance consultant, it might be that you're supporting this on a smaller scale. So yes, this applies, I'm talking from a top tier perspective, but it absolutely applies at every level and every sort of organization. And these are real problems that your clients will be dealing with. And the reason that I lay this out is because it's, especially in your early days, my advice would be, don't try and do too much. Really think, where are your strengths? Where can you really help people? As an example, when I was at EY, so EY very much in this business advisory middle ground, but all these companies think they can do everything else. And we decided, we want to do a bit of strategy work in a particular area. So we pitched to a client to do this strategy work, and we were competing against McKinsey. And the reason that we didn't win the work is because McKinsey used EY as a case study. So they said, we did strategy work for EY. And so the client said, well, if EY are using these guys, then, we're going to use them, because they don't trust their own people. But conversely, EY didn't trust us to do the strategy work, but they absolutely trusted us to do business advisory work internally. So we did lots of internal projects as well. And then we could use that as case studies. And again, that's just about choosing your focus. Where can you make the most difference? Where do you add the most value to your market? And really being focused is really, really helpful. Again, any questions we can pick up in the Q&A. But next, kind of going to move on to the management consulting toolkit. So as I said, it's all about telling a story. And it's you absolutely need to be a technical specialist. You need to understand what it is you're talking about. But as I said in that story, it's one thing to know what it is, and it's another thing to know how to analyze it and how to present it in a way that's meaningful, and especially to an audience that might not be as technically proficient as you. And so in this, a structure methodology that I use for identifying and presenting problems is called an issue tree. So an issue tree is about creating a visual map of the problem, and it can allow you to allows you to break down problems into its component parts. And you've kind of got a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. And again, you've got, it might be you're doing it through data analysis. It might be you're doing a workshop. It might be you're interviewing people. But from a consulting perspective, it enables you to take lots of really complicated data and voluminous data and break it down into something which is, or group it together into something which is really simple and easy to understand and easy to tell a story around. So what that looks like, and I'll give a couple of real life examples to kind of bring it to life. So you've kind of got a problem statement. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you understand what's the problem that you're solving. It sounds obvious, but if you don't understand what is the actual problem, then the answer you give might not address the client's issue, and they might not necessarily tell you. Sometimes they might not know what the problem is. Sometimes they do know what it is. And in terms of kind of that top-down, bottom-up piece, top-down, sometimes they know exactly what they want. There might be a strategic driver, and they kind of want help implementing it. Or it might be, I've worked on projects where we know there's a problem, but we don't know what it is and we don't know where to find it. So you gather your data from different, and the way to do this is literally post-it notes. So I would take all my data. It might be I do it in a workshop, I do it with individuals, I'm gathering data, I'm doing it myself, but write down what are all the issues that are coming up. And then I'd literally have like a table full of post-it notes. And then I would start to group them together. Okay, so these two seem to be related to each other. Okay, so, and then I start to make groups. Okay, so what's the common theme? And then common themes start to emerge. And then that's where you can start to tell a really compelling story. So it might be, as an example, you start with this as a problem statement. The production department is underperforming, but we've got absolutely no idea why or what's wrong. And it might be that you've kind of done your research, you've done your consulting project, you've done your due diligence, and these are the problems that you've come up with, and this is how you group them together. So the production department is underperforming. Why? Because the function is too costly. How do you know that? There's high levels of manual processing, high headcount, and large overtime costs. The other issue is the function provides a poor service. Again, how do you know that? Time consuming and ineffective planning, lack of management, MI. So again, that's lots. It's a way of just telling a really clear and compelling story, or start to group your ideas together in a way that you can present it. I'll just very quickly give a couple of other examples. I'm not going to go through all of this, but should Nike move all its shoe manufacturing to the Mexico from the USA? Yes, because of there's financial benefits, which are these, legal benefits, which are these, logistical benefits, which are these. No, financial issues, ease of doing business, and then the underlying reasons. And then another sort of practical example. Yes. Joe, you got your hand up.
I was just going to say to everybody, which I'll come on to, knowing the problem that you are solving from a business perspective is really important, to be identifying what your proposition is. So obviously it's not only important to do the delivery, but understand what problem you are, what problems are you solving? How are you helping? How can you potentially help clients? So it's really, really important to do that issue tree, as Adam said, to work out what your consultancy proposition is. Essentially, what are the insights that you're trying to solve for clients? Sorry, Adam, carry.
No, that's perfect. That's a very important contribution. Yeah, absolutely. And being able to, and that's kind of what I was talking about in the first slide, knowing what to focus on. If you start out being everything to everyone, you'll be nothing to nobody. So where do you add the most value, and really focus on where you add the most value, and build the relationships, build your business around that. And then just another example: should Premier Inn change official colours from purple to blue? And maybe maybe you've got these questions. Maybe what are the key drivers? Will it generate revenue? Will it save money? Will it make business doing business easier? And you've kind of got what are the yes and no's for each of those criteria. So that's how you start to go about doing the analysis. And then just as a last slide to end my formal presentation for today is, how do you start to present that? How do you start to tell a story around that? And the methodology that I use is something called CTQR. So what does that stand for? So context. So you ideally start with a statement, a description of the current circumstances that you're reasonably confident everyone will agree with. So you want to get lots of nodding heads in that part. Then it's a trigger. Why are you telling me this? What's changed? That's your hook. What's changed? What could go wrong? The exam question is, what do you need to do? What needs to be done? This needs to be, a really clear expression of what needs to be done now. What can you do now? How can we fix it? And then how can we start to overcome that? So this is really the focal point of your communication. And then you've got your main message, which is a short answer with the supporting structure, which is your issue tree. And one of especially I actually saw this shift in management when I was in consulting. What we used to do is kind of go through, have a really long presentation going through this in lots and lots of different stages. And actually we shifted to actually having a really short presentation, and all of these. So in a sense, your executive summary is context, trigger, exam question, main message, maybe top level issues, and then everything else is an appendix. So you'll just make it really clear, really simple for somebody to understand what's going on. And if they're detail orientated, you can then dip into the notes. But kind of this is a really helpful structure for taking vast, complicated information and then presenting it in a couple of slides up front. So just as an example to finish off, so context. We're locked into a contract with an IT vendor for the next 3 years. Lots of nodding heads. Yes, we know that. So what? Trigger. We've discovered that the vendor is charging us well above the market rate. Okay, so now I understand why you're talking to me. The exam question: should we break the contract with the vendor? I think that's a reasonable question to ask, and one that your client might want to know. do your issue tree, and you come up with a conclusion. No, the cost of breaking and switching from the vendor to a new IT platform outweigh the benefits. And then you kind of have all your supporting information underneath. So again, conscious of time, I'm going to pause talking there. But again, just in terms of summary, we talked about kind of what's an overview of the market, just to give you some thoughts about where you should focus, and the sorts of the type of consulting work that you can do, and then a couple of tools for how you can start to really tell a compelling story, both in setting up your business and then in working with clients and solving client problems.
Thanks, Adam. That's brilliant. And I'm now delighted to, if you could stop sharing, I'm now delighted to hand over to Simon Rickman, who's going to start sharing, seamlessly sharing his screen. So that's brilliant. Thanks, Simon.
That's my pleasure. And first of all, let me just, as I just bring up the slides, great. So let me apologize. I was trying to be too clever this morning. I've just come off of one of my webinars called The 7 Habits for Highly Effective Job Seekers. And it went, what do I say? It went too well. And so it overran. So I'm really sorry. I thought I had enough time to do them both, but I didn't.
You're fine.
So
welcome anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess just a little bit of context about myself, and where I complement what Adam was talking about, is that I worked for Accenture for 16 years, either as in the HR function or in the recruitment function or in their outsourcing business. I was never actually a consultant with them, but I was very used to hiring, developing and firing, I suppose, or supporting, outplacing, whatever. So that's my background. And what I want to talk about today is actually sort of complementing what Adam was talking about, because this is about your own consultancy. And I've been working coming up for like 37 years. And during that time, I've had a lot of experience. Most of it has been in employment for corporates, but I've been working for myself now for the last couple of years. And this is the 3rd time that I decided to set up my own business. Whether you call it a consultancy or whatever, people have lots of fancy titles for these things. I think most of them are to impress your partner, spouse, particularly impress your mother-in-law and that sort of thing. But I what do I call myself? I'm a coach. I'm a development coach, but I do run my own consultancy. And Joanna's asked me to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned over the last, I would say, 20 years that I've actually been doing this myself. So I just talked about when I do a lot of stuff with this. If you haven't heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I would encourage you to buy the book. I think it's brilliant, and I've lived by, or tried to live by, its principles for the last 25 years that I've been aware of it. So I use it as a framework for a lot of the things that I do. And I thought it would actually be a very good framework to use to talk about how to run your own consultancy. So the question is, if you're thinking about doing that, there are a lot of questions that you should be asking yourself. And at the end of that journey is that, can I call myself an effective consultant? And it's a journey. And whether you go through these in the order that I go through them is not necessarily the case, but the 7 habits, you would go through them. So it's a good enough structure for myself. And the first lesson, I'll go through these in more detail, is you need to be proactive. And proactive in this sense is taking full responsibility. It's your business, it's your consultancy, and therefore the buck stops with you. The second habit is called beginning with the end in mind. So what's your goal? Why? Simon Sinek, if you haven't heard of him, look him up. He's brilliant. He's my hero. He's fantastic videos. He happens to be Jewish, but that's immaterial. But it helps. He's fantastic. And he talks about start with why, not with what, and not with how, but with why. And so you need to understand what your why is, because if you understand what your why is, you can then start to deliver it and work towards it. The third habit is putting first things first. So, if we look at what Adam was just talking about, there's a lot of stuff that you can have in front of you, but you need to decide what are your priorities. What's the most important thing for you? The fourth habit is called think win-win. And you need to be prepared to do things that when you were working for a consultancy or a business, that you have a whole support network in front of you. And all of a sudden you're on your own. So you need to be prepared to be more flexible. So in this case, I've talked about doing some pro bono, some free stuff to get your name out there. Habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. In fact, that's really interesting. What Adam was doing, and very effectively, was understanding what the client's problems are, not going in there and saying, we know what the solution is, but if you understand what your customer or client situation is, then to be understood, you'll get a win-win out of it. So in this case, you've got to listen to what's going on in your customer's world. It's not just about you. Although you are most important to you, you are not the most important thing to the client. They are. Habit number 6 is called synergize. And this is about recognizing what you're good at doing, but also recognizing that there are going to be areas in which you need support. Because generally, if you're doing this on your own, you become your own HR manager, your own finance manager, your own marketing manager. You need to recognize that there are things that you are going to be naturally good at, but some things that you're not. So where do you need that support? And that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. And the last one, habit number 7, is sharpen the saw. And what that means is you never, ever, ever stop learning. And when I first went out to become a consultant, I did it when I was about 40 because I was made redundant. I thought this is a great opportunity. And what happened is I thought, yeah, I know everything. And then I went to engage with the market and I realized how little I knew. And now sort of nearly 20 years later, not quite, next year, I realized that, you know, I've got 20 years more experience. So that was important. Some of my clients, that I do as a coach, are consultants, and, you know, I'm kind of reminding them of how much they do or they don't know. So let's just go through this in a little bit more detail. I've got 3 for each one, so hopefully won't take up too much time. So how can you be proactive? Take full responsibility. So you need to succeed on your own effort. The buck stops with you. And being proactive is choosing to take a positive can-do attitude. So as you're working for yourself, you need to make sure that you're constantly reminding yourself that whatever happens to you, you have to take that responsibility. And that some people find that quite hard to do. So you need to have some smart objectives, you know, smart, specific, measurable, achievable, rewarding, time-bound. You've heard that before, I'm sure. But you need to set those objectives for yourself. You don't have a line manager that's going to be doing that for you. And you need to work towards them every day. And in terms of that journey, you want to have milestones on the way. You need to keep reminding yourself that you're achieving something, however small it is. It's really important because it breeds a positive approach. The other thing to remember is that this is a journey, not a destination. Life, you get to my age, life is a journey, not the destination, and it goes bloody quickly. And you want to enjoy the freedom that you have as an independent consultant, but you have to recognize that you have to take responsibility for every decision that you make. You can't blame anybody else for that, it's for you. And if you don't want to go to work one day, you want to take the day off, great, you can do that. But you can't then complain that you haven't achieved anything that day. Because you're recognizing that the responsibility sits with you and you need to make those choices wisely. Habit number 2, we said, is beginning with the end in mind. So you need to know what is that goal and purpose. So you need to make that decision. Is what do you want to be? You have that opportunity. So you could be self-employed, but you could also be the director of your own limited company, or you could align yourself to an agency as a contractor or consultant. There's lots of different pros and cons to that. You know, one really important pro and con to this is what's happened in the last few months. So I'm the director of my own limited company, and I put myself on furlough, but I was only allowed to take a certain amount from my salary because I took the other part in dividend, and the Chancellor decided in his infinite wisdom that they weren't going to take that into account. If I had been self-employed, I would have been able to take more money out. But, you know, that's just to make the choices. You've got to live by that. We didn't know, of course, that this was going to happen. The other thing you need to think about is what's your value? And again, Adam will know all too well that these consultancies charge a hell of a lot of money for their services. So do you say, well, I've worked for Accenture, I've worked for EY, I've worked for Deloitte, etc. And can I possibly charge the thousands of pounds that they do per hour? And the answer is probably not, unless you've got something that is of real value. But you have to believe in your value. You have to start with something. So actually it was on, I did the 7 Habits for Highly Effective Job Seekers for Work Avenue, as Joanna knows, back in last November. And there was a guy called Will Kintish that was there that talked about networking. And I had a session with him afterwards. And he talked about your normal charge. You need to work out, my normal charge is X, which gives you the flexibility to say that actually my normal means that I'm prepared to go up, I'm prepared to go down, depending on the circumstances. But the other thing to think about is that if you feel that your potential customer or client is taking advantage of you, my advice would be walk away, because you don't want to devalue your worth. And one of the challenges you have when working for yourself is the financial, which we'll talk about shortly. So you need to make a very conscious, important decision. The third piece of advice I'd give with this would be around knowing the why, the who, and the how. And we call this the elevator statement. So how can you very quickly tell somebody that you don't know, or indeed people that you do know, who you are, what you offer, and what makes you unique? And actually, that's really quite difficult. And I did a session with I have 3 coaches, and I did a session with one of them a few weeks ago. And that was really difficult to get it down to something that was very specific, that I could say to somebody, I'm a learning development coach, I have 5 things that I offer, blah, 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 whatever it is. So habit number 3 is, how can you put first things first? How can you prioritize? And what's the decision behind that? And this is where I talk about finances. You need to plan those finances carefully. And indeed, for a lot of people either being put on furlough or they've lost their work, it's just as relevant now. So you need to think about what are your outgoings, what's your income? And you need to make sensible adjustments. And fortunately, because we have the technology, you can actually use one provider for your utilities. We did that recently. We renegotiated with our TV mobile broadband. There's all sorts of things that you can do to make sure that you can see that there's money coming in or not, and there's money going out or it's not. But it's something that you need to take control of. And this is one of the things that indeed I would say I'm absolutely not an expert when it comes to money. I'm quite good at earning it. I'm very good at spending it, but when it comes to actually managing it, it ain't me, because my focus is on helping and supporting my clients. It's not on earning as much money as I can. That's just the choice that I make. And if I make the money, great, and it's important. So I've learned that I have to have an accountant, because I'm not expert in that area. And I have a bookkeeper who happens to be my wife, just by pure chance. But I recognize that Jackie's really good at the bookkeeping. So I send her my receipts and she sends out the invoices and things like that. But these people are also very good to help you for things that I'm not very interested in or very good at, things like tax and VAT. And they can help you because they're more independent. The third thing is that you have to go to work every day, because when you're working for yourself, you need to recognize that you haven't got that pressure of getting up and going to an office between 9 and 5 or whatever it is. So you need to set up your own office. You need to make sure you have all the facilities there and make it feel like you are going to work every day and doing something every day, however small it is. Habit number 4 is called Think Win-Win. And this is being prepared to do something to get your name out there, particularly when you're new, doing something. Indeed, that's what I'm doing today. It's my pleasure to do this as pro bono, because I believe in Work Avenue. I like the people there. They have helped me to do things. So it's the win-win again. And you need to be open to all sorts of ideas. Nobody knows everything, ever. The Prime Minister doesn't know everything. The President certainly doesn't know very much, whatever. The Queen doesn't, nobody knows everything, and they never will. So you need to be open to new ideas and suggestions. And what I've learned is that you need to plant, you can't necessarily fix the solution in the room. So as Adam was saying, through that really good decision tree that he used, part of it is planting a seed, putting ideas and thoughts out there, leaving them in people's mind, fertilizing them, watering them, but not expecting an immediate return, which you may have got if you worked for a corporate or for another business. The second thing is you've got to learn to follow up with your leads. And there's a very fine balance between following up and being perceived as a nag. And I am perceived as a nag, because if I don't follow up, then nobody's going to do it for me. So I'm prepared to take that risk. And what I do is I say to my clients, if I haven't heard from you by the end of play next Friday, I hope you don't mind, but I will be following up with you. So I've kind of learned to deal with it that way. And the third thing to learn in this area is always thinking about your customer and client's perspective. It is not about you. So if you lead with, I've got this fantastic set of workshops, which I do, and I do this coaching, which is brilliant, they're not interested in that. What they're interested in, what Adam was talking about, is what is their pain? What's the problem that they are experiencing? Because if you understand what's hurting their business and then say, I have got a solution that can help take away that pain, they will listen to you. If you lead with, I've got, sorry, you go on, Joanna.
No, I was going to say, when you finish this, I think these are brilliant points, and definitely ones that I would back up from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective. So it's absolutely brilliant. I'm just a little also aware of time, because I really want to make sure we have enough time for questions for everybody. But carry on. Thank you, Simon. It's brilliant, really good so far. Excellent.
Joanna knows me very well. I have something in my office says less is more, and I really but you know, it's also a really important lesson, because I love to give, and so that's the challenge I have, but you also need to listen. So seeking first to understand. So do your research, but think of it from their perspective and share the results to grab their attention. Have a generic CV, but your CV in this case is your business card. It's not the same sort of CV as you're applying for a job, and learn to adapt it so it's reflecting what the client is looking for. Of course, get yourself a coach, get yourself someone that you can talk to. I've got 3 co-coaches that we coach each other on a regular basis. So you can bounce ideas and hold each other accountable. Synergy is number 6. So recognize what you're good at and where you need help. But it does mean that, I've mentioned this before, that you need to be a jack of more trades. You need to be your own marketing and PR, and recognize where you need to get help. Then you've got to go and talk to everybody. Network, talk to everybody. And you'll be surprised, because it's not them that you need, it's their network as well. And you've got to play the long game. You will not necessarily get the results that you want, and things will come back to you. If you do all the positive, the law of attraction, if you put positive things out there, they will come back to you, but not always as you expect. The last one is never stop learning. So attend as much as you possibly can. The webinars, the conferences, all that kind of stuff. And you'll meet with people and you'll learn things. Never shut anything down. And also, because it's tough, those peaks and troughs, don't let the highs be too high or the lows too low. Try and keep on an even keel and focus on building your resilience, because you will have knocks and bumps along the way. It's how you deal with them. And equally, when you get a fantastic client that says you're going to get a lot of money, don't start to spend it until it's in the bank. I had a fantastic pipeline, and on the 23rd of March, the whole thing fell apart. You never know.
That's brilliant, Simon. Thank you so much. Can you stop sharing? And then
you say, could you stop speaking?
That's really brilliant. Thanks so much. I am going to literally do one slide, so that everybody, because I think I'd really like to give time for questions rather than for anything else. And the slide that I'm going to do is to back up what Simon said, which is to work out your kind of business targets. Because if you want to replicate the amount of money that you earned as a consultant, the greatest thing about setting up a consultancy business is it's much lower cost than setting up to be a cafe owner or to buy products or anything like that. So the greatest thing about setting up a consultancy and having all of these skills and expertise that you can use to make money is that it's a in a sense, it's a low cost business. You have to work out what you want your annual income to be. So your turnover or your profit, like if you want to be earning £50,000, £100,000, take some money off that, because that's not all that you're going to be able to put into your bank account. And I would say base that income that you want across 10 months, because you're the one that's doing the delivery, and when you're on holiday you're not earning money. So base the annual figure that you want to try and reach on 10 months, or as most consultants work on, 242 days. It's this random number. And then go to the nitty gritty. And this nitty gritty down at the bottom is really important. And it's something that I will do with you if you want. I'm very, very happy to have a one-on-one business advice meeting with you to work out how many clients you need per month at what kind of daily rate, or how many projects you need at what kind of rate, in order to hit that monthly turnover, in order to hit that annual turnover. So that is what I think is one of the most important things to do when you're trying to set up on your own. You know, if you have certain financial obligations and a way of life that you're accustomed to, it's one of the most important things to do. So I'm now actually going to stop sharing, because I think I'd really like time for questions. And if you would like a session with me or with Hannah on how to set this consultancy up, we can go into more detail. So apart from will we get the slides, which is one question, and I'll get Simon, if that's okay, and Adam to send us the slides, and we'll be able to send them to you. Okay, so what questions have we got?
So Michael asked, what time frame? It's $1 million question, of course. So what time frame would you advise budgeting for until you get your first gig? So how long will it take until someone bites?
Simon, do you want to start that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a really good question. And the answer is, of course, we don't know. But what you need to do is make sure that you're prepared for that. So I started my business literally 2 years ago, and it was a big risk. Jackie was concerned about it. And that's something that you need to get your partner, your wife, husband, you need them on board. They're going on the journey with you, particularly when you're used to, as Joanna said, you're used to bringing in a monthly salary. That's great, but that isn't going to be happening. So that's why what Joanna said is absolutely vital. And I didn't know the answer to that. So I had a meeting with my accountant in September of 2 years ago. And she said, what do you want to know? And I said, I haven't got a blooming clue. I didn't know, but I'd had financial provision. So I said to Jackie, we're going to have to dig into our savings. So that's going to carry me through this. And so what I did is I spent the first 4 months making sure I had all, because I do workshops, I have 5 workshops. I made sure I had 5 workshops. So when somebody said yes, I was ready to go, rather than I sold the idea of doing this workshop and the coaching, and they said, can you start next week? And I said, oh, I haven't created it yet. So I made that conscious decision, and that was hard. For the first 3-4 months, I was making sure I had what I was going to deliver, and I started reaching out to the market at the same time. So you need to do those 2 things concurrently, but you've got to make sure you've got something ready to deliver. It took me 6 months before I actually started to deliver and earn money.
I think the other thing is, which I always say, is, you know, you might have a great opportunity where you've actually kind of got a client and then think, oh, this is good. But the thing that I always say to people is you've got to work on the business as well as in the business.
Right.
And let's say, you know, some people are like, oh, I'm so busy, I've got loads of work, which is fantastic. But you have to spend every single week, put some time aside to not just deliver on the, you know, to deliver the project or to do the work that you're going to do for your client, but to spend time on business development.
Correct.
So I agree with Simon, Michael, that, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I was going to add, so picking up on Simon's presentation as well, it's really difficult, especially in the early days, to think long term, but think about all those habits and those behaviors that Simon put in at the beginning. They don't bear fruit straight away, but actually longer term, they will pay off. And it's really tempting to kind of deviate from that in early days, but it does pay off to stick with that, just as an alternative approach, which is what I've decided to do rather than the approach Simon took. And you need to think what's right for you. Is I decided, I've broadly understood what the problem is that I need to solve for clients. Rather than developing it and then try to sell it, I would develop it once I got a client, and develop it as I go along. And it might be you can do kind of like a beta course or a beta beta type price as well. So you can offer a discount, say that if you've shown the value, and going back to something else that was talked about, focus on the value rather than the price. But if you focus on that, then you can build up those relationships where you can potentially do that as an option as well. And then just picking up on what Joe said as well, one of my early experiences in consulting when I joined EY was it was a growing team. So when I joined, they had so many projects, everyone was out delivering and no one was doing any business development. And as soon as I joined, all those projects finished and they had nothing else in the pipeline. So as Joe said, focus on the business and not just in the business. I think is a really good message.
So we've got a question on pricing. I mean, I think that from a pricing perspective, Lauren, it's really about, you've got to feel that the price that you charge is of value. I mean, everything has got a, you know, you could have a long rope, as it were, and, you know, what will look expensive. I think Adam mentioned it right at the beginning. You know, some people could charge £1,000 a day and some people could charge 100, but you've got to feel that what's your worth, that you are giving value, and also that it fits into your financial situation. So a bit like I was saying, you know, if you've got your annual turnover and you know what you need to charge, if you're undercharging all the time, then you're never going to hit your monthly target and you're never going to hit your annual target. So pricing is a very, very individual perspective. We've got Simon Hutchins on here who has delivered workshops for us and is a branding graphic designer. Well, I'm sure that, you know, there'll be graphic designers who will charge one price and other graphic designers that will charge a little. Pricing is one of those very difficult things to work out, but there'll be a kind of a market rate as well that you have to work on. Simon, yeah.
The question on pricing also mentioned a COVID special agreement, and I just wanted to just remind everybody that some businesses and some family incomes have really suffered during COVID, and others haven't. Some have stayed stable, and some people, like Morrison's, have made a killing over all of this. So don't when you're going into pricing, because of these interesting times that we're living in, don't naturally assume that people have less money, because not everybody does, and they might be marketing themselves as having less when they don't really. So you don't have to worry about that all the time.
I think two lessons for me as well in that is, you know, think about who is your ideal client and who's the ideal person you want to work with, because you don't want to work with, you know, knowing who's going to be a good person for you to work with, both from a financial perspective and a technical perspective, is really important. And then also, in terms of the messaging that I've said a couple of times, you know, focus on your value, focus on the story. You want to take your client on an emotional journey and show them that the value they're getting from working with you is worth more to them. Solving that problem is worth more to them than the cost of the service that you're provided. So it's your job to take them on that emotional journey.
And Simon Hutchins just wanted to add another point, if you want to unmute yourself, Simon.
Yeah, hi everyone. Literally, Adam just took the words almost right out of my mouth. I was just, you know, it's all about, from my experience as kind of a brand and design consultant now, it's not necessarily putting a single price on what the deliverable is. It's definitely about looking at the value you're offering to that individual or that business. So what's the end goal for them? How's that going to make a massive impact on their business? And then trying to align your costs to potentially that impact as well.
So Adam or Simon, does Duke or Hannah, can you recommend anywhere to get the off-the-shelf terms of engagement for clients to sign? I mean, we do have HR. There's a great website actually called Simply Docs. I'll try and find it, but there's quite a good website called Simply Docs, which for £35 you can get loads and loads of kind of legal employment documents.
Yeah. The one thing I would say about if you're looking at an engagement letter or terms of engagement between you and a client, it's fine to get one that's off the shelf, but that would, if you're really concerned about that being legally binding, then I would suggest that you engage with a lawyer over it. If you're going to have lots of different clients and your terms of engagement change depending on what you're doing for them, then I would say that it's better to pay the price up front to make sure that it's bespoke for you and the work that you're doing, then hope it was okay when it comes to an issue with it.
I'm going to go, so Jeff's question, any advice on how to brand your consultancy? Well, on October the 22nd, we have a workshop called How to Build a Brilliant Brand. So please do sign up for that. It's a 3-hour workshop on how to create a brand. Alternatively, as you've heard, Simon Hutchins is a branding consultant, so he might be able to help you. But I think a brand is more than just the look. It's also the tone of voice, what you're saying about yourself, and the brand has to be consistent across every single element. So let's say you're running an event and you've got your pop-up banner, that's a look, but also how you come across on your tone of voice on social media. The example I always give is we've got 2 premium ice creams, Ben & Jerry and Haagen-Dazs, both similar pricing, but completely different brand looks and feels. So it's all about what you want to say and also about what you want to look at. But we do have a workshop on that subject, Jeff. So if you want to come along to that, otherwise I'm happy to chat.
I was going to say, I'd add to that, exactly. I think you also took part of what I was going to say right out of my mouth in terms of it's not just about the logo. When you're an individual consultant, you are the brand. So you are the brand. It's not a logo. And I've taken a couple of different approaches when I've started a couple of different businesses. In some businesses, I've put in a lot of money to get the physical branding looking right, and that's important, but it hasn't necessarily led to results. And other times I've decided, I'm the brand, or the brand is the relationship people would have with me, and I'm going to focus on that. And once I can afford it, I'll invest in getting myself a logo afterwards. So there's different ways of approaching it as well. But absolutely back up what you said. It's more than just the logo.
Thank you. And we have another question about, sorry, where are we up to? Oh, LinkedIn. I will actually go first to Adam and then to Simon on LinkedIn. Adam's a bit of a kind of LinkedIn guru, so I will go to you first and then to you, Simon, on LinkedIn to find prospective clients.
So what was the question? How do you find prospective clients?
Do you use LinkedIn to reach out to prospective clients, or do you focus on your existing network?
So I think the answer is both. The answer is absolutely both. Absolutely tap into your existing network. In terms of LinkedIn, there's a lot to talk about how you do it, but essentially, the broad brush methodology for building a LinkedIn audience and engagement platform. And again, it's going to be very dependent on your business, but you want to be joining relevant groups and engaging in content and conversations on those groups. And the reason you do that is for reach, so you can target new people who are relevant for you to speak to. You also want to find relevant influencers, because individuals get much more engagement than most groups and companies. So find individuals who are talking about what you're talking about. And Simon talked about this, be generous, be giving. So jump on the comments, add comments, but don't do it in a way to kind of draw attention to yourself. Be the most value adding person in those comments, and then you'll actually start to draw an audience towards you. And then once you're comfortable, start sharing posts yourself. And you've got two different types of posts. You've got eyeball posts and you've got engagement posts. So you've got eyeball posts, which are kind of quite generic and most people agree with, which will get you lots of likes and lots of people commenting. But you kind of want to do that once you've done some of the other activity to make sure that LinkedIn rewards the algorithm promotes your post in the right way. But you could say it might be, the number one demographic on LinkedIn is job seekers. So doing a post around job seekers in a way that adds value is a good way to get eyeballs, as an example. But that's not your target audience for most people. People with no money looking for work is not your target audience. But that will give you kind of the social proof, and then you have a more specialist niche type of content which actually adds value to individuals, and that you'll get less eyeballs on, but you'll actually be able to start those conversations. So again, you need to think about what your objectives are. Is ultimately you want to get clients, so you want to do different types of posts, one which gives you the social proof of eyeballs, and then you actually want to start building actual relationships with individuals, with targeted content, targeted engagement, and targeted posts.
And Simon, do you want to follow up on anything on that as well?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. First of all, it is about planting seeds. You've got to scatter very broadly. So you can't rely on LinkedIn, but you have to be on LinkedIn. It's like you're using it like as a calling card or as a business card. So it needs to be something that's relevant. So you need to think about, what does your profile say about you? And it's about you. It's the why again. Why would somebody come to you? There are millions of people on there. Why would they come to you? What makes you unique? And let me tell you now, you are unique. There is only one you in this world, and you need to feel proud of that and put that across. The other thing is that it's a bit of an art and it's a bit of science. And what Adam was talking about, there's a science there. You have to follow the science piece of it. And the art bit is the bit that you can't control. So some of my best posts have been just posing one question, asking people for some feedback and support, and it got like 500 reactions. And yet, excuse me, I was writing these really deep and meaningful posts that were really important, but just kind of got 2 or 3 people liking it. And I thought that was brilliant, but the other one got there's no magic to it. But the thing is, you have to do it. You've got to do as much as you possibly can.
And the other thing, by the way, on networking, not that I keep blowing the Work Avenue trumpet, but we have a Networking to Grow Your Business workshop on October the 29th, and it gives you like a networking mapping plan to basically how to use your personal contacts to grow your business. And we've had some very good feedback on that. So that's another workshop that you can use. I think we might have time very, very quickly for one final question about, Hannah said it is about,
the question, it's what are your thoughts on the benefits of a day rate as opposed to a project rate?
I'm going to go to Simon, and then we're going to finish off.
Yeah, so the answer is have both. So I have a day rate, and I work out what my hourly rate is as well. Again, it's not just about me, it's about what my clients want. And I've got clients that will take me for a day and those for an hour. So you have to be very flexible. It's having something in mind and then flexing with it. That's the important thing from my perspective.
And Britt made a very good point, which is be aware of scope creep. So if you have an hourly rate, you know, it's very easy to say, right, to a client, the project's going to cost this many hours. And then actually they keep saying, oh, could you do this? Could you do this for me? And then, you know, what you said you were going to charge, all of a sudden it goes out of the window. So you need to be very clear if scope creep seems to be coming into effect, that you need to kind of go back to the client and say, look, it's going to take much longer. It's not actually going to cost this, it's going to cost that.
So I think, sorry, John, I think the answer to that is it's all about managing expectations. So in terms of that engagement letter, have scope creep as something that's in there so you can legitimately say, if that happens, we can now talk about it in a positive way. Yeah, sorry.
So we've got to 12 o'clock, and I just wanted to say thank you very, very much to Adam and Simon. You've been absolutely brilliant in terms of giving your wisdom and your time. We really, really do appreciate it. And if you could just stay on the line a minute, but if you need any help from Work Avenue, please be in touch. And we'll look forward to seeing you at future workshops and webinars. But Simon, Adam, thank you very, very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Right, have a good day, everybody.
I'm going to stop.
Stop recording, yes.
Yeah.